All right, wanted to give my thoughts on a team that has been playing a pretty solid basketball, considering their situation where they are without their best player in Kawhi Leonard, and that is obviously the LA Clippers. They have been off to a pretty solid start as I'm recording this. They're sitting at the seventh spot in the Western Conference. That'll put them in the play-in tournament conversation if the season were to end today, which is ridiculous to say because it is extremely early, but they are a play-in tournament team right now with some quality games under their belt, a lot of games against teams that we look at as contenders. They've played a pretty good level of basketball considering losing Paul George in the offseason. And obviously, as I said earlier, not having Kawhi Leonard for pretty much an extended period of time. I don't know what the timetable is right now for Kawhi, but regardless of that, their start has been pretty solid. So if you look at a lot of teams where they're having to operate without their best players, 10 out of 10 times, those teams know in order to win games and in order to stay afloat, they have to hang their hat on the defensive end of the floor. Go look at any team throughout the last couple of seasons where they've had to operate for an extended period of time without their best guy. Those teams, if they're able to stay afloat in their conference, most of it is because of their defense. So we knew for the Clippers, in order for them to try to work without Kawhi Leonard and to stay head above water without him, we know they're not going to be a dominant offensive group. And they've been pretty solid offensively at the start of the season. They haven't been horrible, but they had to hang their hat on the defensive side of the floor. And they have done just that. They have been one of the best defensive squads in all of basketball. Mike Brown talked about it a couple of days ago after they beat the Kings, how this team is so versatile defensively. They're aggressive. They switch 1 through 5. So that's completely throwing off the opposing team's offense. There have been some games this season where they have done a great job at shutting down the opposing team's best scorer. They did a good job this season of slowing down Tyrese Maxey when they played against them. Did a great job of slowing down DeMar DeRozan when they played against them. And just last night, playing the Toronto Raptors, and the Raptors don't have any all-star or superstar caliber players in that team, but they slowed down RJ Barrett. So defensively, this team has done such a good job, and you can attribute their early season success to what they're doing on that side of the floor. So again, there is this theme where you have a team who's without their best player and they're looking to stay afloat as they still want to contend and stay competitive. You have to hang your hat on the defensive side of the floor, and the Clippers have done just that. Credit to Jeff Van Gundy. People around the Clippers, the media, the coaching staff, they have just been raving about what Jeff Van Gundy has brought to this team from a defensive perspective. For me, it is still very weird seeing him on the sideline. This is probably the first time since I became a basketball fan where I've been watching basketball games and Jeff Van Gundy has been on the sideline. I'm so used to him being like in the commentator booth with Mike Breen and Mark Jackson. It's just really surreal and different to see. But people have been raving about what he is bringing to the table from a defensive perspective for this team. They are aggressive. They are really cutthroat on that end, and that is why they have been able to win games and still play at a pretty solid level. On to their offense. I said it before, they have been solid enough on that end, all things considered. There are a lot of guys I want to give credit to. One guy in particular is Norman Powell. I have always been a fan of Norman Powell and his game for a while. He has a couple of seasons under his belt where he has been a very efficient scorer, never an all-star player, but just one of those guys where you can throw him on the court, whether he's starting or coming off the bench, and you can expect him to find rhythm, find his shots, and be like an instant offense sort of guy. If we talk about instant offense sort of players where a coach can just throw them on the court and know they can go get them some very productive buckets, Norman Powell is well within that conversation. One of the most reliable non-all-star offensive options in the entire league. He has been just great this season. This is the best season of his career. He's had years before where he was kind of flirting with that 20-point per game range, but this season he is finally there. Him and James Harden have made for a really, really good backcourt. That is not something I thought I'd ever really say. Like, raving about a Norman Powell and James Harden backcourt, but they have been just great. James Harden has been pretty solid this year. These aren't prime James Harden numbers at all, but he and Norman Powell have played super, super well off of each other. It's been really cool seeing James Harden continue to embrace like this facilitator type of role in his last couple of seasons with the Sixers and obviously here with the Clippers. They have meshed together very well. They have been a pretty solid perimeter attack. A lot of credit to Norman Powell, who I think is well within that most improved player conversation this season. There are a lot of other guys right now that have been in that conversation. And again, it's early, but Norman Powell stepping up as probably the best offensive option and offensive weapon for the Clippers this season has been great to see. Also, want to give a ton of credit to Ivica Zubac, another guy who was playing career level basketball, has always been a solid big man, never an all-star, but somebody who was very competent within their position. And this season, he has carried a massive load for this Clippers team, especially from a rebounding perspective. The Clippers have been one of the most solid rebounding teams in the league with a very small lineup. Outside of Zubac and maybe Kai Jones, there aren't many other bigs on this team. This is a very small Clippers group, and they play a lot of small ball lineups. So to see them be one of the most solid rebounding teams in all of basketball, you have to give credit to Ivica Zubac and what he has been doing in that particular area. And his offense has been just great. It's not just pick and roll stuff that he's doing with James Harden, but he's been great in the short roll, making reads, either making those kickoff passes out of the short roll or that nice little floater that he has once he gets into the paint, and also posting up. Side note, I said this a couple of videos ago. The post up, the low post game is not dead. People will act as if the low post game is like non-existent in the NBA. It is just not true at all because you have guys like Zubac who are playing at a very high level this season. Domantas Sabonis, Karl-Anthony Towns is spending a lot more time posting up here for the Knicks this season. The low post game is not dead at all. Despite the notion that every big man in this league needs to be able to stretch the floor and shoot and all of those things, the post-up game is very much alive and well. In a league where teams are switching, hunting mismatches, it makes sense for you to have a big man who you can throw the ball down to in the post and take advantage of smaller defenders once they get on him. And Ivica Zubac has done that at an extremely high level this season. Not an all-star, not all-NBA level, but really, really solid. And he's playing at the best level he's played at so far in his career. We'll see how sustainable it can be, but I just love his production from the 5 spot. Again, it's not just pick and roll stuff like he's traditionally been doing over the last couple of seasons. He's getting touches and he's converting, right? He's getting those hook shots in the paint out of these post-ups, those floaters out of the short rolls, and all of those things. He is playing such solid basketball. Love what Ivica Zubac has been doing here for this group. We'll see how sustainable this is for the Clippers, and they're going to need to sustain this as they want to stay within like that 5 or 7 range as far as seeding goes, as they're waiting for Kawhi Leonard to get back. Now, here's the reality. This team does not become a contender until Kawhi Leonard is back. That's just the straight up truth, right? Like, I love what they've been doing so far, but unless they get Kawhi Leonard back and playing at a superstar level, which is the level you'd want him to play at, because you don't want Kawhi Leonard playing anywhere underneath that because you're not a threat if Kawhi Leonard is not coming back as that potential top 5 caliber player. But if he's not back, this team isn't going to make any massive noise in the postseason. And this season is still going to be a disappointment because if they fall short again, we can't really have another season where we're like, well, injuries hit him, let's give him an excuse, because that has been the case over the last couple of seasons a bit too much. Right? So they need to stay sustainable and stay consistent, especially defensively, and get the offensive production from guys like Powell, James Harden, and Ivica Zubac in order to stay afloat, to hold things over until Kawhi Leonard is able to come back. And even when he does come back, that is also a massive question mark, because now you're like, is he going to stay healthy, right? Can he stay healthy? He may be good during the regular season, but what if we get into the playoffs? Can we expect him to play for an entire postseason? Right now for Kawhi Leonard, that is a shot in the dark to expect him to play for the entirety of a postseason. Right. So I don't want to sound too cynical, right, and shoot down the progress they've made so far this season, because it has been impressive and I love the style in which they played. But the fact of the matter is, while things have looked great and I want to give them massive credit for how they played, this thing doesn't work. And this season is not going to be seen as a success or impressive if they're not able to get to contender status at some point in time. Now, your question is, if we get a healthy Kawhi Leonard back, is this a contending group where you have Kawhi Leonard and James Harden at the helm? Is that a contending squad? I think so. Right now, in a league where everything is wide open, I say this all the time, there is no clear-cut favorite to win it. Like, you may have some people in Vegas saying it could be OKC or it could be this team or this team. Right now, once we get into the playoffs, there is no lock. No team has the Western Conference in a bind right now, right? So if the Clippers do get a healthy Kawhi Leonard back and you still have this level of James Harden that's probably more efficient come springtime, and you're still having Norman Powell play at this level and other guys coming in and contributing defensively like they are, then I think this is a Clippers team that can contend 100%. So we'll see what ends up happening. But this base they built for themselves to start the season off has been extremely impressive. Great play from your role players. A lot of guys who are kind of reviving their careers right now. You have Chris Dunn sprinkled in here, former lottery pick who never really turned out into this all-star player. He has etched himself as a great role player, especially defensively for this team. Kevin Porter Jr. had some personal stuff going on that he had to be held accountable for. Comes in, he's not efficient, but he's had some solid moments off the bench. Guys are coming in and they're contributing. Kai Jones himself, I just mentioned it, right, was away from the game for a minute. Now he's back. Love the culture they built. Love the way they played. Again, it's this theme of teams where they're without their best guy and they're having to embrace defense. Love what they're doing, and I really hope they can stay consistent and sustainable and stay head above water as Kawhi Leonard is hopefully nearing his return. This is going to be a big stretch for them. We have the in-season tournament. An in-season tournament run for them, if they can make it, would be absolutely huge, would be massive, not just from a confidence standpoint for them, but from how people perceive this team, right? And how good they can be once Kawhi comes back. So we'll see. Big week coming ahead for them. But I love to start here for the Clippers. Got to give credit once again to Tyronn Lue, proving that he is still one of the best coaches in the NBA. Whenever you have a coach who can work with what he's got, right, and keep a team head above water when they're without key guys, you know you've got something good in the head coach. Amazing stuff from the Clippers here. Again, they have to stay consistent and stay sustainable, because if they can't stay playing at this level and have role players playing like this, then once Kawhi gets back, it means nothing, and they're never going to really cross that path and get into contender status, which is where they need to be at this season when it's all said and done. But solid start for the Clippers here. Love what I'm seeing, and let's hope they can keep it going moving forward here as we enter the in-season tournament.